Hello, my name is Yhatha,
My name is Ronald.
and welcome to the Ronald and Yhatha After Dark podcast. And today we are going to be discussing a pretty interesting topic as something that I thought about for the past 5 years around, and I made a video about it recently on Yhatha, which is my main channel. And what essentially it is about is that we're both Nintendo fans, right? We're both really big Nintendo fans. However,
Absolutely.
we don't really like corporations sometimes. That's simultaneously. So, as a pretty big Nintendo fan, how do we like support Nintendo while they're also such a big corporation? And how are we still Nintendo fans given all the that they've been doing?
Well, I feel like at the end of the day, the biggest reason for us to support Nintendo still is that we are humans. We want to live, we want to enjoy media, and it just so happens the media that makes us happy is Nintendo. Um, but thankfully, as me and you have both said, we don't really love corporations like that. We just like what they produce, and it's what makes us happy.
Yeah. So, our main point that we wanted to just present before we get into all the specifics that we're going to talk about in detail is that essentially Nintendo is just acting in their best self-interest, right?
Yeah, I mean that's what
Yeah.
every company
Every
is.
which the problem is that with just the economy that we live in is that every single company, if they want to survive, has to act in their self-interest, and surviving is in the shareholders' best interest, which that's just how our
Yeah,
economy works.
it's not necessarily surviving like me and you think of, like
Yeah.
eating food, getting the lights on. It's like, oh, how can we make our profit margins bigger to make our shareholders
Yeah.
happy?
And when people say like throw around stuff like, "Oh my gosh, if Nintendo was more pro-consumer, then they would have been um then they would make more money." I disagree with that from a business perspective because in the long term, there's a lot of risk in the gaming industry. And if you read Nintendo's investor reports, they constantly say stuff like that. Like the gaming industry is a high risk industry. And I don't like that. Like something like X game is worth $80, but it's more of just like a matter of fact, which is I feel like it's easy for you to say, for me to say that and be like, "Oh my gosh, you're like super. You just love the corporations. You want them to make more and more money." I don't. I'm just recognize that the system that you live in, they have to do that if they want to keep on going, and that's gonna happen no matter what, unless they're a private corporation like Valve. Which the reason why people say Valve is like the most pro-consumer, the PC's most pro-consumer. That Valve doesn't have shareholders to appeal to, so they're
Oh
private.
yeah, because they're not
They're
publicly.
not
Yeah.
publicly traded.
Okay.
So I guess if you wanna, if we wanna just convert to the PC master race, then that's the only thing that we have to left. But
There's only one
unfortunately,
option.
unfortunately, I like Nintendo's design practices in their games, and that's a very unique, very unique design that they take that I've never really seen fully replicated in other forms of media.
Well, and also, as much as like I actually think that like I don't personally have a PC, I would love to have one.
I do, I do.
However, the other options on the market, specifically for the Switch, like I would not, if there's other good options for a portable console that gave me what I wanted out of it, plus a Donkey Kong game, which no other company could do that, but that's a different conversation. I would go out and buy it, but currently the other options are like some random PC handhelds, which either you can get the same experience on Nintendo or it's a higher quality experience, whether that's like build quality. Like I actually really like the build quality on Nintendo stuff. That is something that I've consistently been outspoken for. Granted, you pay for it, but it's something that like even though I'm not paying $200 for the Xbox Elite controller, which is in theory nicer, their general options are just like way nicer than like other stuff. Besides, I would argue the PS5 has nicer controllers, but that's a very specific thing, and I'm also very particular about the analog triggers. I've gone on this rant before. I won't
Yeah.
do it again.
It's starting our like the corroborating points to our main thesis, which is to simplify what we were saying. If we lived in a different economy, then Nintendo would not have to make a lot of the decisions that they make.
Or even if it's not that, we wouldn't feel their decisions as harshly,
Yeah,
even if it was something like if we got paid more, if we had more consumer protections.
yeah. It's not Nintendo's job to make you happy. It is the government's job. That is as far as I will go. Anyways.
And if you want to fix that, thankfully, currently you can. So please go out and research and
Oh
do
gosh.
stuff.
Okay. That's as far as I will go into the poking that bubble. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But that's my viewpoint. So our first
There's some child out there like, what is he talking about? I don't know what he means.
Anyways, our first viewpoint is that we will want to discuss that is commonly talked about in the community. We're going to be going down every single like main talking point that at least I pay attention to in the Nintendo fan base, and particularly maybe the greater gaming fan base. And I'll have the timestamps marked on screen so you can go and view specific viewpoints if you care. And first, starting off, $80 Mario Kart World, and also just their pricing in general. This is also including their variable pricing that they said, whatever you want to interpret that as. This includes the fact that during the Nintendo Switch 1 generation, they were very just adamant on every game being $60, even if it was a broken Pokemon Scarlet and Violet or a Game of the Year Super Mario Odyssey and Zelda Breath of the Wild. But
Wasn't Snipper? No, Snipper Clips was 20.
Snipper
Right?
Clips was a digital game, so it was different.
Okay.
Yeah.
But no, I wasn't. There was definitely a few that should not have been $60. There's a good handful. I think Yoshi's Crafted. I did not find any interest in that, but there's a few out there that were not worth it.
Yeah,
Hold on, I could probably find it,
like
but that's besides the point.
Kirby Star Allies was like a 5-hour game you don't touch again.
Or Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze that was $20 on the Wii U and $60 on the Switch.
Yeah, like them
with
getting
an invincibility mode.
Yeah, that was like stuff like that. And what is your thoughts on this whole thing? How do you? I don't want to say defend.
What, specifically the $80 or like
specifically $80, but addressing the whole issue entirety of pricing. And I also, by the way, everything we say, we're not defending Nintendo. We're more so if we come off like that. Like we're never necessarily defending. Like we want them to do that to you. We're more just excusing it, I guess. Which we don't. Ultimately, we would live in.
Excusing it isn't the right term, but
Isn't the right
maybe explaining it is the right term. But even then, I do. The one thing I will give, specifically with the criticism of Nintendo, I do think they should have stuck with the industry standard currently.
Okay.
Even if that meant theoretically taking a hit on Mario Kart World, which I don't think they would have. Even if that meant not bundling in Mario Kart World and bundling in the demo that should have been bundled in here in America. Which, again, we can get into that later. But I would have rathered them stuck to $70 with Mario Kart World, not bundled it for $50, or even bundled it for $60 or whatever, even if they just wanted to give us a $10 discount.
But then it's not a clean $500.
Well, I don't care. they can get over themselves. But, like, I do think it's ridiculous, and I do think that there is some level of criticism that anybody should be able to have for being able to say, yeah, $80 is pretty extreme for what I ultimately have come to acknowledge isn't really, in my opinion, an $80 experience, however you cut it. However, I do say Mario Kart World is a great game. For $50, it's absolutely worth it. That's how much I paid. I'm very happy with the game in that sense. However, if I'm taking the criticism of like the $80 price tag, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous.
Okay. Yeah. So my take on Mario Kart World, and I mentioned this in my full Yhatha video, which you criticized the hell out of, but that's besides the point, is that for pre-context, given the context of the gaming industry, I do not think Mario Kart World is worth $80. So just making sure you understand that point, or that viewpoint of mine, I think it's worth $50. Hell, I even think it's worth $70. I just don't think it was. I'll give you that. I agree with you. I don't like that Nintendo was the one that tried to do it or make the raise. I would have liked it, especially as a Nintendo fan. It was like EA or something that was like, actually, NBA 2K26 is worth.
They kind of do that. We'll get into that here in a second. We'll keep going.
But I would have preferred if it was a different corporation that made the jump to 80, just so the flame's not thrown at Nintendo, just as a fan, because I feel like I have to defend myself. But the reason why I think Nintendo made a Mario Kart World at $80 was because, so, if with inflation accounted for, and I don't mention consumer wages or like consumers' wages. This is purely what the corporations are feeling, and like the amount of like sales is
Feel.
around. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
around stayed the same. Is that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was $60 back in 2017, and with inflation, it is about 80 now. Like
Okay.
I am making the inflation argument that people do say. Now, of course, the defense of that or the rebuttal to that argument is that oh well people haven't made wages to catch up to that inflation. Corporations don't care about that.
Yeah,
They
and that's
don't.
also not Nintendo's job.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
not.
I will say in defense of the $80 price tag, and I put defense in quotations. I will play it for $80, even if that's how much I had to pay. And the other defense that I will give, and again, defense in air quotes, Nintendo does not do a ton of microtransactions with their $60, $70, $80 mainline entries.
Mhm.
Even if they have DLC, you don't have to pay money to get this like game breaking glitch like you see with EA or 2K or any of the other like sports
Pokemon.
companies. Pokemon even they don't really have it as
We'll
badly.
get to Pokemon in a second.
We can get to
I just
Pokemon
wanted to
later, but
address the one person who commented that because
uh,
there's always someone.
but like even in like for instance, I liked Valorant for a little bit. Valorant, you had to pay for additional characters. Now, part of the defense is like, oh, it's a free game. You don't have to pay for all of them. Even if you do pay, you can just get one at a time. I don't like that. I would rather do like a Fortnite approach. I've said this before. If you're going to have microtransactions, make everything cosmetic. Don't limit a player because, oh, I want them to pay $1,000 on this game. Nintendo doesn't really do that. They will release DLC after the fact. They may even release amiibos with exclusive costumes. That's a thing in Donkey Kong Bonanza. But ultimately, I can sit down, play Donkey Kong Bonanza, play Mario Kart World, and play all the way through. In Mario Kart World's case, I can like be competitive online without having to pay any additional money other than like skill, which that's not money, that's just time. But I will give Nintendo that. However, the other thing that I would say that I think Nintendo might be trying to move back to is back in the day, and there's some comments on your video about this, that specifically the comment that was like, oh, back in the day, video games were so good. They were so good. And to an extent, I'll agree, video games were good back in the day. However, video games also weren't a consistent price back in the day.
Oh yeah.
So if you're going down that route, which I think is where Nintendo's trying to go down, I don't necessarily care paying for Mario Kart World $80 because I know I'm going to play it $80 worth. I always view my time on video games as like a transaction, a per hours or the experience. Experience is a different thing. If a game is 10 hours and it's the most earth-shattering experience I've ever had, I'll pay it. For instance, Grand Theft Auto 7, that's the newest one.
6. My God.
6.
Bro.
Clearly, I'm not a big Grand Theft Auto, but I'm gonna go out and buy Grand Theft Auto 6, right? Probably because it's probably gonna win some Game of the Year award or some other thing. But even if that's a 10-hour experience and it's so good,
Probably
so
won't
in
be.
depth, looks so great, it won't be. But my point is like I'm willing to go out and spend that money on that game if it's that good and only 10 hours. I'm also willing to go out and spend $80 on a game that I know I'm going to spend 200 hours on by the time I eventually retire my Switch 2. So in that sense, like I don't necessarily care. I'm just mad that they were the first ones to do it and they broke an industry standard that has been around. However, if you go back and you're like, okay, well, this wasn't always a standard, whatever. But that's a completely different conversation. We can get into that. If at the end of the day, like for instance, the Dragon Wheel Racers or
Dragon
whatever,
Drive.
the
That's
wheel
20. That's 20.
that's 20, that's
Digitally.
good.
Digitally. I don't know what the physical will be, but
But even then, like they did a Metroid Prime remaster
that
for
was
like 40
yeah.
bucks. Like if they start bringing games down and that's the like prepayment that we
Yeah.
get,
Variable
yeah,
pricing.
like if they do that, I'm not going to be mad. But if they start pricing every single game, regardless of its quality, at $80, and what worries me is that I don't think Mario Kart 8 is like there, then like I understand the outrage. I'm going to be outraged. I'm probably going to be on here complaining to you about it. Like I can understand
Okay,
that,
you've already
and
said you're
yeah, yeah.
you're rambling by this point.
I'm
Um,
rambling. I'm rambling.
Now, my interpretation of why I why I think Nintendo specifically was the one that specifically made Mario Kart World 80, because theoretically, if they just wanted to go up to like make 80 a standard across the board, they would have made Donkey Kong freaking 90. I feel like that was more justified of a game to be made expensive. Like,
Um, I've played it. I understand why it's 60. I do
it's
think it's
70.
gonna be Game of the Year contender. Or
70.
70, sorry. I was thinking standard pricing, but it 70 is now standard, so
Yeah.
whatever.
But um for the like why specifically Mario Kart? So Mario Kart 8 Deluxe sold like nearly 70 million copies, something close to that, something around that range. Probably a little less than that, I think. But in general, Nintendo is like, wow, Mario Kart is like a really freaking profitable franchise for us. A lot of loyalty to it. A lot the type of game that people will just pick up and buy without really thinking about it that much and just to have, you know. So using that logic that it has a lot of brand loyalty to the franchise, they and the industry as a whole, when Nintendo revealed the price of Mario Kart, I think PlayStation CEO was like, "Thank God Nintendo did that," and then Xbox made the jump, and then the Xbox retracted itself. But in general, the industry wanted it to be 80. They just no people were just didn't have some CEO just didn't have the balls to do it, and Nintendo was like, we're coming off the heels of an incredibly successful generation. We got the balls to do it, and that's in that way they would make relationships with other developers as like being like, hey, we'll take the PR hit so you can get away with doing this. And specifically, Mario Kart World was the one that they were like, this has a ton of brand loyalty. People will buy it anyways. Because the PR department can say that it's worth 80 because of the free roam and is online infinitely replayable. No, it's not. It's because it's Mario Kart. And then they've made the bundle just
I
to give some padding to it. That's what I
I
want.
actually don't love that argument. If that's the argument you have,
That's just
so be it.
interpreting what Nintendo did necessarily, which
Okay, if we're just interpreting what Nintendo did, that was definitely their thought process. I do think though that that goes to what people are actually criticizing, is that people knew that they were going to, like people knew that they were going to go out and buy Mario Kart regardless. Nintendo knew that, and so they took advantage of it and charged the extra $10 because they knew there wouldn't be a massive backlash. What I'm interested in is to see how many physical copies have actually sold.
I am too.
I don't know.
By the way,
I
the if you're specifically like if you're watching this and you didn't get the bundle for the Mario Kart or for whatever reason, um, look into the used. The physical copies are already being sold on eBay used for like $60.
Yeah,
Just throwing that out there.
I I'm really curious to see what ends up happening with the used, because if the market doesn't go out and doesn't buy this $80 game and instead opts to buy the bundle, which I'm willing to bet that's what most people are doing,
Hmm.
it might show that Nintendo might be less willing to do this in the future. However, neither of us are really in the position to be like, yeah, Nintendo shouldn't do this, because we both contributed to them being like, oh yeah, it's fine. We still supported the console, but whatever.
Yeah, it is kind of just like I think there was like one influencer, like Nintendo influencer, that like put it really well around like what like the just the state of like how they feel like with the Mario Kart being 80. It was like, I mean, it's just like what are you gonna do about it? Like it's still a good game.
Yeah,
It's just that that's what they want the industry to shift towards.
yeah.
So
I feel like we can still have like criticisms of it. However, I don't feel like our criticism should be directed at Nintendo. I feel like there is a more appropriate figure.
my way of like if I'm gonna like try to give advice to people, buy it used, please. Don't buy it for 80. However,
Yeah.
don't buy. I don't
Well,
using the free hand of the capitalist market. Theoretically, I don't think it's worth 80, so don't buy it for 80.
and the other thing I'll give people, there are consumers laws in place for a reason that the EU has been fantastic about this in the recent years.
They've, like,
Go out and demand laws. Go out and demand better wages. Go out and demand to be treated better. That is the best way to do this. The greedy Nintendo corporation is not going to sit here and be like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to listen to my quote unquote fans. They don't care. You're a number on a spreadsheet. That's all it is. So, like, either vote for with your wallet, which won't work because there'll be stupid people like me and Yhatha out here
eh,
going out and I'm just being honest. We will still go out and buy the thing. 100 other people are
I
still
would.
going to go out to buy
I'm
the
more
other
likely
thing.
to wait and buy it used, just for the record. I don't think I'm that stupid.
I'm stupid. I'll admit it.
I'm buying Donkey Kong used. I didn't buy it in day one. I want the game, but I just didn't have the. I have my backlog was too long.
What I'm saying is that there are more productive ways to express
Yes,
this
yes,
rage
yes, yes, yes,
instead
yes.
of being like, I'm so mad at this greedy Nintendo corporation, which is true. I will give you that. They are greedy. They are terrible. And we'll get into some more of their stuff here in a second. But like, instead of complaining about the price tag, go out and use your voice for other means. I'll leave it at that. You
Yes.
can do whatever you want with that. Go educate yourself. That's all I will say.
Don't educate yourself through YouTubers. Anyways, next
You can
topic.
do it somewhat, but yeah,
Most of
that's
them are
besides the point.
stupid. Anyway,
Please read. YouTubers are stupid. I will give. There's like three that I actually like, and
okay.
even then, they have bad takes.
Next. Fan shutdowns. What do you think about fan? Like, there's like someone makes a fan art of Mario with a big schlong. Nintendo doesn't like
Oh,
that. They need to keep an image. They sue the guy. I don't know if that specifically ever happened, but that's just what I'm talking about.
is there like a real world example you can give?
I mean,
Like,
for
you know,
example,
a
like
fact,
I think
or-
like, well, this is getting into like piracy, but like this is kind of getting into like another one of our points. But remember, like there's Super Smash Bros. Melee, like an emulated
Oh,
competition, and then
yeah.
Nintendo's like, no,
Okay, do you want to stay on the concept of them shutting down like
fans like, do, or like,
okay, are we talking about specifically art here that they're
yeah,
doing, or are we
specifically art.
talking
Here's
about
another
fan
example. Here's
projects?
another example. There is a YouTuber named Super Mario Logan, and I'm bringing this guy up because I watched him when I was like 10, and I feel so bad about the fact that I watched him because he's really cringe. I'm gonna be honest, but he got shut down by Nintendo, or he got a cease and desist by Nintendo because he was a 9 million subscriber channel that used Nintendo characters, and he was like basically using like plushies of Nintendo characters like Mario and like Bowser Jr. and having them like do naughty things and cuss and be racist and do dumb YouTube stuff. There's a side of me that is almost glad that he got a cease and desist because he's kind of cringe, but that's besides the point. Ultimately, art is art, whatever. Sure. I'm not kidding. This guy made a YouTube video of like, I bought my girlfriend a Lamborghini. Bowser Jr. reacts. Like, this is the type of channel I'm talking about.
Okay, let's remove the art from the artist. I'm gonna ignore that. I'm just going to talk about this from the basis of an American standpoint.
Yeah.
Somebody who has grew up in America, has lived here forever. I really value the First Amendment, you know,
Freedom.
typical freedom of speech, and that should be protected under it. Even if Mario is doing really weird things. However, I also understand that Nintendo has a brand to protect. I
Yeah.
get it. And sometimes that stuff, I always lean on, like, it's the internet. I don't believe the internet should be policed by a single corporation or be allowed to be bullied by a single corporation to protect their assets. And I always lean back on this should be dealt with by whatever host is hosting this or this art, right? Whether that's YouTube. YouTube should have gone in and been like, hey, this guy is making these Mario characters, which is typically associated with children, do naughty things. And he's very clearly not a children's channel, but he's attracting child Yhatha over here. Maybe we shouldn't allow this guy to like profit off of children. I could understand having that. I would never complain about that, even if Nintendo's like, "Hey, can you moderate this guy? He's making the children corrupt."
Hmm.
If that's something that YouTube wants to do, fine, but don't remove him. Like that's ultimately where I kind of lie on it.
Yeah, they
I
made
also
him.
come.
What he is now is he renamed himself to SML because he had to get rid of Mario, and all of the characters he changed with puppets that he self created.
Okay, that's
And like Mario, he shaved his head and took his hat off, and that's what Mario. I'm telling you, this channel is weird.
yeah, I'm kind of gathering that.
But
My
it,
okay, my point is I don't think that Nintendo has a personal right to go out and like kill these people. I don't think they should have the right to like ban them off the internet or sue them for $1 zillion.
yeah,
Especially since in a lot of these cases, Nintendo is not making these videos as crazy as they are for
yeah,
probably good reasons. But
we're staying too much on this one channel. There's other like stuff that's happened too.
yeah, but okay, are we including so like do you know about the Metroid
Oh, like aim 2R,
remaster?
like that whole thing.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Like, are we including that in this conversation, or are we waiting
Yeah,
to say
yeah,
that?
yeah. Basically, pretty much. It's
I
what?
I don't think Nintendo has a right. I feel like our copyright laws need to be redone, and
Okay.
also just copyright laws
That's still going
internationally.
through with kind of our main overarching point. I will give Nintendo one thing is that their shutdowns more recently have been more consistent. I'm sure you can cherry pick some example and be like, "Oh, but this happened." But
Yeah.
most of the examples I found of Nintendo like sending cease and desist to like YouTube channels recently, within like the past like 5 years, have been like they've either modded something or they're Super Mario Logan doing weird crap. But so like it's been like if I'm like making my YouTube videos, I genuinely don't fear that Nintendo would do that. Now, if they come after me, I'll take everything back that I just said. But I currently do not know of any cases of like mild the Nintendo just be like going like someone like Scott the Woz being like, no.
We're we're leaving piracy to a different
Yes, yeah,
conversation,
piracy
right?
is a different conversation. But
I still so okay. To that point, I will kind of agree. Even with piracy, like it's been consistent. They're not overextending their power to basically kill people. Um, I'm not. I don't mean that Nintendo would literally kill people. They are doing other things, like suing people. But
yeah.
the main point that I'm making is just like what they're doing is under the law, and they're not bullying like other corporations. They're not bullying smaller like development teams. Now, the one thing that I will say, besides Super Mario Logan, who's doing that, and you know specifically with fan made games, I don't. It's just an unclear point in like what is it called? For instance, I can go out and make a modded version of Star Wars, right? I can make Star. There's a specific movie I'm referencing here, but I'm not gonna. Oh, I guess I can say it. I guess it's not that bad, but it's Star Balls, right? You know what I'm saying?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, it's this parody of Star Wars, right? I feel like you should still have some level of like, oh, I'm gonna go out and make my own version of Star Wars as long as you're not ripping it off beat for beat. You can make the argument for Metroid Prime or the
AM2R.
is it AR
AM2R, yeah.
AM2R?
Yeah.
But even then, I would argue that that is still more linked to the piracy issue, which is like it's a service issue. That has always been my take on privacy or piracy. We can talk about that later. I would rather loop in AM2R to the piracy chat just for the sake of clarity, because that is something I clearly disagree with Nintendo on, especially since like they just don't provide a great way to access their older games, and they also don't work with developers who want to recreate Metroid, or was it Metroid 2?
Yeah, yeah. Everyone, by the way, when I bring up this like example, and I feel like I'm saying like, oh, under our economy, like Nintendo feels like they have to do this. That might the rebuttal to that is like, oh, Sega, someone remade a fan game of Sonic, and
Yeah.
then they got employed to make Sonic Mania, like, and I'm sure there's like other corporations with similar things. And yeah, I do agree with that. Like, I think Nintendo is definitely on the more aggressive end. That is unfortunate. Um, ultimately, I mean, it hasn't affected me though. I feel like this is one of those things that's like, I'm not. I'm more so just like, I'm not like blowing off the issue. I'm more so just like decreasing the magnitude of it because it's like, is that gonna happen to me and you? No. It's
But
just kind of
my
like,
only
oh,
point, if we're making for the sake of the argument, I do think that taking the approach of Sega and just being like, hey, I've remade this game from the ground up. You own the IP. We'll go 50-50. We'll sell it for $20. Nintendo's happy in that situation. The consumer's happy in that situation. The person that made the game is happy in that situation. No one's mad.
uh-huh.
Or even for 60. That's what I would rather critique Nintendo for, because that is something Nintendo can change about themselves.
Yeah, yeah. This is something that's
And
separate from the economy. Like this
yeah,
is a
this is something
Nintendo issue.
separate. Yeah.
This is a
And
Nintendo
even
issue.
even if you do want to protect the person to make, because I don't know if Nintendo sued them and like ruined their lives. It's very possible. I wouldn't
They
put it
did that to
past them.
someone. I think like Gary Bowser, that guy that like made the
Yeah.
Switch too, but that's not fan friendly.
I think that should be illegal. That's terrible. We should outlaw companies from doing that. I'm down with that. But I also think Nintendo, under the current system, should have the right to defend their stuff. However, I do think we should critique them and kind of bully them even into treating these fan service projects more as, hey, we're not doing that. Why is this an issue? Oh, well, we haven't released this game. For instance, they still haven't released all the old Pokemon games because no one would buy their new Pokemon
That's
games because their new
partially
Pokemon games
Pokemon
suck. This is
Company.
a different,
That's
but
Pokemon Company to an extent, which we'll get to
even
that.
still, it's a service issue. So the reason that people go out and pirate, the reason people go out and make fan service games, we can bully them into doing these types of things. Now we can't make Nintendo make Super Mario Logan. That's its own art form in and of itself. And currently, yes, I do think I personally think that Logan should, however crazy he may be, I don't know what his views are. I don't know anything
He
about
had
this
9
kid.
million
However,
subs for the.
that's insane. But I do think he shouldn't have been cease and desist. I think that should have been just something like YouTube should have age restricted him. Same thing on the
I think they
other
tried
things.
actually, and then he fought back.
Uh, That's okay. I still think Nintendo should have age restricted him because
Yeah.
like
Whatever. Okay,
if you're if
that's not
whatever
yeah.
or like even if I don't know anything about Super Mario Logan, so maybe we can even go on the explicit photo of Mario. Yeah, make sure that Nintendo blocks access of children
Okay,
because
yeah.
that does break their like
Yeah.
brand image. Or
So my
whatever, right?
my point on this is that there's two. I have two sides or like two main points to this whole argument to close it. Just to wrap up what I'm thinking is that from a legal standpoint, I think Nintendo under the current system has the right to do what they do, and if you don't really like that, then change the system. And then there's a second point if I had, as I do agree that Nintendo is a bit aggressive with how they approach it, and that's when I got into like the Sega rebuttal, and that's actually another point I wrote down, and I'll get more into that later because that's a Nintendo specific policy. That's not really
Yeah.
a system wide policy. So our next point on our list is anti-piracy measures.
I think Nintendo's incredibly stupid, incredibly incompetent, and has failed every single measurable aspect of anti-piracy measures, including but not limited to not supplying the games to its consumer base, who is very loyal and will spend an ungodly amount of money on Mario Kart World, and will also
They have done
just
NSO. NSO's pretty good. I will give them that.
NSO is cool, but they have the entire Virtual Console library that they could have just ported onto the Switch.
They did drip feed it, which that's a different debate. That's a different.
No. Even if they drip feeded it onto NSO, they could have still done that and still just had it on the eShop. You see what
Okay,
I'm saying?
go
Like,
go go on.
anyways, my point is piracy in fan-made projects, even, which kind of goes back to the Metroid and the Sonic Mania like argument, is a service issue, not a consumer issue. It's not our fault that you're not supplying us with stuff that we want to play and would rather play on your system. I would much rather play Pokemon Emerald on a Nintendo Switch than a Game Boy or other means, however that may sound. I would rather do that on a Switch because the Switch is convenient. I play the Switch a lot. The Switch 2 is what I'm referring to. But like, I would rather do that. And it's Nintendo's fault for not providing it. Now, we can have a conversation all day about NSO and whether or not they should have just ported all of Virtual Console over, and whether or not the Pokemon Company should specifically port all their games onto the Switch. But we can leave that for later because the Pokemon Company I know is its own point that you want to bring up.
Yeah, it is.
But my main point is a service issue. I'll stop yapping.
Okay, so I mean, I want to bring up that emulation is fully legal theoretically. Like, if you download like Dolphin on your computer and you get like a Wii game and you extract the data through like a CD extractor and then put the ROM into your computer, that is completely legal. Nintendo cannot legally do even under our current system. Theoretically,
Yeah.
Nintendo cannot do anything to you about that. Now, if you make YouTube videos about that, they might shut your videos down. But like, you physically doing the act, that's actually legal. You won't, there's no problem with that. Now, I agree that they are kind of stupid with like putting their games available. I think they've gotten better with it. I will give them, but in general, yeah, it is kind of annoying how they drip feed it. I That's also partially a little bit. I mean, ultimately, like piracy, like fighting against piracy fundamentally is like, yeah, the corporation does have the right to do that. However, and this is my final point in relation to piracy, and this is like this is really touching the bubble here. Get ready, get ready. Let's say you are living literally paycheck to paycheck, and this is out of you for a reason out of your control, which most times it is, and let's say like you want to play some video games, you want to get into the industry, which there are people who have so much money, you cannot make the argument that society does not have enough money to account for you. I think piracy is fine in that case.
Yeah. And again, it's a service issue. Nintendo's not offering any cheaper alternative to play these games. And so naturally, because there's a consumer there, they want to go out and consume these games, so they're going to do it through any means necessary. This also goes back to the other point, even though it's theoretically legal to, emulate your games, which is why everything isn't banned by the Nintendo ninjas.
They try to. They fail.
They try to. Their lawyers are very busy. It would probably be a very high paying job. But the point is the reason that I don't even love that argument is, again, if they simply fulfilled the needs of their consumer, whether that be people who want to emulate their older games on a PC, they could still even hit that market for the cheapest. Because let's be honest, Nintendo's just sitting on these files. Like, it's a file, like, especially for PC, there is no upfront cost to do that. They could charge $5 for every single SNES game on Steam, and they would make a bazillion dollars instantly. And that is a service need that would be instantaneously fulfilled. Ultimately, though, yes, theoretically, Nintendo has the right to sit on these games.
Yeah.
But again, it's a service issue.
Pokemon! I've been saving this one because you've been mentioning it periodically. So this is something interesting. I was watching an Arlo video, and he was talking about, this is actually a pretty recent Arlo video, and he was talking about like how Nintendo doesn't release like Mario games like every year or every couple of years, like mainline Mario games, and he was making the example like, oh, Nintendo could be like EA and just release like every yearly releases and like saturate the franchise, or they could be like Pokemon, and I thought that was interesting, because he just separated Nintendo and Pokemon, which is kind of what the fan base is starting to do, besides like the really weird people that are just super into Pokemon for some reason. But
Hey.
but yes, I just think do you think it's valid now? For some pre-context, Nintendo owns a third of Pokemon, and ultimately the Pokemon Company gets to make their own decisions with how the games are managed and like how they present them. The only like restriction is that they have to be on Nintendo consoles, I think. That's my knowledge of what's the situation there, is that they own a third, and that's it.
Owning a third, I don't know how they own a third. I don't know if this.
It was an
how
agreement
this
in the
is set up.
90s. That's, yeah.
Well, at any rate, a third is ownership majority, especially if it's a public company. Like, I don't know if you can go on and trade Game Freak stock.
No.
but
It's like they own a third of Pokemon, the brand. Game Freak owns another third, and then the Pokemon Company, or I think so. There's Creatures Inc. is somewhere in there, and they either
It's
Creatures Inc.
probably
is
Creatures Inc., Game Freak, and Nintendo.
it might be
That's
the
what I'm assuming.
Pokemon Company, Game Freak, and I don't remember which way around it was.
I think the Pokemon Company is what they own.
I
I'm
think so.
assuming.
I think so.
Okay.
Ultimately, what the point that's important here is that Nintendo only owns a third, and that's what Nintendo fans more recently are starting to be just segregating themselves from Pokemon. Be like, yeah, they're kind of crazy. They're not part of us anymore. It's almost like if there's a new Smash game made and they cut all third parties out to like try to reboot the franchise or something, but that's a different conversation if you want that to happen. But theoretically, they cut all third parties. They would want Pokemon to not be there. That's the kind of universe that we're envisioning.
First off, I blatantly disagree with this universal rendition because ultimately, whenever people think about or even just Nintendo, we can go to the bigger brand. People automatically think of Pikachu, whether we like it or not. It's just a fact of life. They think of Pikachu, Mario, and Zelda. Those are the three franchises. If you're a Zelda, or if you're a Mario, or not a Mario, if you're a Metroid or Kirby fan, sorry about your luck. But those three like franchises are what everyone thinks of.
Mm.
The main issue with segregating them, quote unquote, is that Nintendo does ultimately control what's done. However, they do have a bigger production cycle, whatever we want to say. That doesn't matter, though. Here's the issue. The issue is that they are underperforming even games like EA. I own College Football 2025.
Very proud.
I love that game. Or no, 2026 actually. It's the newest one. I own 2025 and 2026, in fact. I love both those games. I do think 2025 is better, just slightly. However, those games perform very well on the system they're on. It works great. I do not feel like those games are undercutting the system's performance and the needs of its consumers like Pokemon is. When I boot up Pokemon and I look at a tree and a tree in College Football 2025 looks better, there's a concern here, right? I do think they're getting better, and if we want to have a more in-depth Pokemon discussion, we can talk about how they were a handheld developer for years. The way that they were able to keep up with production cycles is because they were dealing with older hardware, and through each technological jump, it took them a couple of years to adjust. For instance, an example that I can show you is on the 3DS. It took them like until really Sun and Moon for the 3DS games to even look all that great. And that's comparing it to other 3DS games.
And Scarlet Violet. I'd say Scarlet had they. I haven't played. I mean,
those games are garbage.
How did they play on Switch?
Yeah, no. They're better. It still looks like trash.
Okay.
Pokemon CA looks better. The issue is again they're going so like the jump from the 3DS from the DS is not that great. Right, like ultimately, like they were able to emulate like Mario or it was Mario 64 DS, I think. Right?
Yeah.
Is that the title of that game? Yeah.
Yeah.
They're able to do that. That was basically a 3D game. Even Pokemon Black and White 2, I think, had some pretty cool like 3D visuals. They were experimenting with it. It was pretty cool. Then they went to the 3DS. And it was a little bit of a jump. There is some little, like, even my favorite Pokemon games, not very unpopularly, is ORAS, or if you're not a Pokemon fan, Pokemon Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby. I love those games because those were the first Pokemon games I ever played. Yeah, I'm a Zoomer. But, if you cannot already tell. But even those games look pretty rough around their edges when you compare it to, like, Pokemon Sun and Moon, or even better, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. I think. I don't know. Even those games look rough, right? The issue is now you're jumping from what was the frame rate on the 3DS?
It was like 240p, maybe 4 something p to like 720p. I don't know.
I don't even think it was 480. I think it was like I think you're right. I think it was 240. I think we jumped from 240 with a decent computer power to the power of the PlayStation 4 when it initially launched, basically.
Are you saying the Switch had the power of a PS4? No, it did not.
A very broken down one. It's like if you took the PS4 graphics,
it was like an Xbox 360,
but then you gave it you gave it the internals of an Xbox 360.
It's like an N64 Pro, if that ever existed, to an Xbox 360. That's what I think the jump was.
I'll give you that. So like now they're not even have to contend with 4K, which won't be as big of a jump. So I'm praying to God because I love Pokemon. I just have not been able to play the past like 2 generations. That the next mainline entry is good. I'm praying. Nintendo is abusing me in terms of your argument in your original video.
I haven't.
I am being physically abused by the Pokemon company right now because I keep buying their games and I keep hoping that it's better and it's not.
Welcome back. I had to change locations.
I got in trouble.
You know, okay. Anything more on Pokemon that you want to say? I think you kind of summed up your point.
I've said most of it. It's a consumer issue, and I would pay an ungodly amount of money to play Pokemon Emerald on my Switch too.
I will say this. I am a Nintendo fan. If you have to separate them, and I have to say I'm a Nintendo fan, but I don't support Pokemon, I'll do that. Although I do kind of agree with, like, well, Pokemon Company is so self-operated. I don't even care. Just shut them off. Hey, I'm just saying, if corporations didn't survive infinitely, if that wasn't an expectation and they would eventually die within someone's lifetime, I think Pokemon should have died by this point. I think the free market should have taken them down.
I'll keep my mouth shut. I'll keep my mouth shut.
They have not proven that they can adapt. Anyways, our next point of conversation.
No, I won't. I'll leave it. I'll just complain about that on my channel.
Okay. Our next point of conversation. Ninja lawyers.
Yeah, they suck. And I think that we should vote to make them like not as effective.
Yeah, this kind of goes similar to what we said in fan shutdowns and anti-piracy measures, but like, I mean, yeah, Nintendo has the right to do that, and like, I mean, I feel like saying the argument, if you don't like the right, then they shouldn't do it, because then ultimately that's coming down to like, oh, I mean, like a corporation can decide to do what they want. You know, like it is what they do. They have all this power, but it's their decision to do what's good or bad. Is that a decision of a corp? Should that be down to a decision of a corporation?
I feel like that should be left to society.
Yeah.
I don't. Again, my political views are showing, but I believe if a society decides that what the actions of a corporation is, specifically, I'll remove Nintendo from this equation. Let's say a oil company in Louisiana. There is one that I'm specifically referencing that dumped a bunch of chemicals in the waterway, and that basically gave a bunch of people cancer. Nationally, it's known as Cancer Alley in the United States. That's bad. Most people will agree that's bad. The reason that they were sued is because that is against the society and that a corporation shouldn't ultimately be able to make that decision.
Hey, at least
this is the same process. This is true. Well, maybe. We don't know what they're doing in Vietnam or China. But at any rate, like, hopefully they're not.
I shouldn't laugh about that, but I did accidentally.
My point is just like, if they are doing something wrong, and I do deem this to be wrong, and I think most people would agree that, like, yeah, you shouldn't lose everything because you decided that you really wanted to remake Pokemon Emerald for, like, a nicer, like, system, for instance, or, like, PC. You shouldn't be sued $1 bazillion because you love what a company produces and you're just making a fan project.
I will give Nintendo this. I think there is nuances conversation that's out of the scope of this podcast. Because ultimately, like, I agree that, like, yeah, you should buy their games, but like if they're not providing it, I don't know. It's a weird thing. Next point.
Again, it's dictated by society. If society wants to play their games and not pay for it, there is a means to do that, but we won't get into that.
Yes, we already kind of did, actually. Our next point. Okay, this one's when I was going into like the second point of fan shutdowns. This is what this is getting into. I hate that Discord does this.
Congratulations! Happy birthday!
Being insulted, or not insulted. sorry, I can't read. Being insulated slash ignoring fans and the industry. So like being very self-contained.
I feel like that's just corporations. I don't.
No, no, no. I mean like like Nintendo. They don't follow trends. They don't follow like what the rest of they don't care about what the rest of the industry doing. But at the same time, they also don't really like care about fan projects. They just think it's bad. So like they're very arrogant. This is what this point is about. Nintendo is
Okay, so
arrogant.
you're just talking about their arrogance.
And
I still feel like that partially, like they're particularly bad, but so are 17,000 other companies. Like we can point at Amazon, we can point at Netflix.
Okay, I don't think that's
One that
actually the
I'm
point. I don't-
no, no,
The
no,
thing,
no,
it
I know,
here,
but like
the thing about this point specifically is that I don't think that you can make like, oh, this is just the system. This is a Nintendo specific thing. This is a choice Nintendo's making that
okay,
other corporate they don't have to do. And my point with this is I think it's kind of a double-edged sword, and I'm fine with it because in one hand, you get innovations in the gaming industry that are cool because they're so insulated and because they're so arrogant and so
like $80 games. I stop.
yeah, you because they don't really care about what like their fans think of them or anything. They just do what they do. You get cool stuff because of the societal insulation. But on the other hand, they're also stupid. So it's just a fundamental
Yeah,
like personality that you just have to wager. Is it worth it to you? To me personally, I think it's
I
cool.
again, I boil this back down to other corporations. I specifically, I'm a college student that does not live in the same state as my parents. We know this.
Yes.
One corporation that particularly takes me off that has also influenced another corporation is Netflix, and the other corporation is Disney Plus. They both have that stupid household thing. You
Oh,
know what I'm talking
how
about?
is okay? How is this at all relevant to this point?
I'm bringing it up. So
Okay.
for years, streaming services have been, provided. Basically, you have a login and a password, you're fine. No big deal. You sign in and you're solid. Now what they're doing is they're tracking your location, and this was specifically a new thing with Netflix that they started because they had the installation like Nintendo does to do anti-consumer practices. Now, going back to our argument from earlier, yeah, society should, in my opinion, be able to dictate this. Is the same argument I used with their like lawyers, right? However, I also to actually address your point because your point is like this is a double-edged sword because they're insulated. They do some innovative stuff, even if that does come with stupid stuff like $80 game price tags, or specifically in Nintendo of America's case, not bundling in the $10 tech demo. Yes, you are correct that they do have some level of innovation. For instance, a lot of people were clowning on the Switch 2 for the mouse thing, at least on the side of the internet that I'm living on. They're like, "Oh, it's a mouse. Why is that cool? You can
I
just
thought
plug in a mouse to your."
side of
Hmm.
Amazon, everyone loved that. I
Oh,
guess I'm on a
okay.
different
From
side.
what I heard, it was like, "Oh wow,
Okay,
Nintendo invented a
okay,
mouse on a
don't get on.
controller."
Go on,
At
go
any
on, go on,
rate,
go on.
my point is like they do wacky stuff like that, and sometimes it does genuinely influence the other gaming industry. For instance, PlayStation did adaptive triggers, which competed with Nintendo. That's really cool. I like when that type of stuff gets brought up in this competitive atmosphere that does, push the bounds. But alternatively, again, there is anti-consumer practices because they're isolated and
Okay.
yeah,
When it links to anti-consumer practices, that goes back to our society point earlier. However, when
yeah,
ignoring like the system, which this is, I was kind of hoping that this point would ignore the system, and this is like a
yeah.
different point. It's just a personality trait, and I kind of respect it. It's like your friend that is like,
Okay, let's narrow down this conversation. Let's talk about the Wii. Okay. The Wii was pretty generally liked. It was a weird console. Sorry, I cussed there, but it was weird. It was not what people wanted. People wanted Nintendo to go Xbox, wanted to
oh
go
yeah, but
PlayStation,
at
but
the time, people like I remember on the internet at the time because I've been around for all you Nintendo fans that came on the Switch generation. I've been around. I've been around during the Wii
yeah,
U, And everyone's saying that the Wii U was so cool, it's so innovative nowadays. No, you go back in time. You go back in time, and Nintendo was like, what the hell are you doing? You're just trying to be weird for the sake of being weird. And now Nintendo were like, no, be weird for the sake of being weird. You guys are hypocrites anyways.
No, like to that point, if that's what we're narrowing down, if we're just like, yeah, Nintendo's weird sometimes. Yeah, I think it's pretty fun.
I think,
Like
yeah.
that is like if we're removing the anti-consumer practices that they are currently doing and like the history with piracy, yeah, they're just kind of weird. They're just kind of quirky. I kind of like that.
I would also throw into the Mario Kart update where they like forcing people to do like intermissions, like worldwides, like that whole thing. I'd also throw this into there. Because, like, that's not an anti-consumer practice. I don't... I hear the argument online. It's like, oh, I bought this game for this purpose. There's a Discord server you can go join if you really want to do that. That has the hop-in nature of worldwides that you want it to have. Like, I don't really... I think that argument, no. But in
I
terms of, like...
agree to an extent. However, I do think, again, we're ignoring the anti-consumer practices, but I also think it's a service issue. Like, this is kind of not even anti-consumer at this point. This has just been being stupid. Kind of like they're, like, just not wanting to, like, service, like, old games.
Mhm.
People want to go out and play 3 course tracks, right? People might even pay for it. I'm not encouraging that. I think it should be included in an $80 game. Ultimately, it would not take Nintendo a lot to separate the two categories to have competitive Mario Kart, which is only 3 tracks, and a just normal mode, which would include the intermission tracks. They could do that with like probably not a really complicated programming process. It would probably take like one update, done.
I know.
And they could have a competitive mode that was a lot more strenuous to get points. Like, I don't know how they would do it, but then that would be a way to fix that. And that's just a service issue. I am willing to criticize Nintendo for them not servicing their people who wants to be competitive. Another examples like the Melee community and how like they're kind of like constantly getting kicked around by Nintendo.
Yeah. Okay. My thing with the Mario Kart World update is that, like, I do think it was arrogant. However, as someone with who has played a lot of free roam, I will say the intermissions are cool from like a visual perspective. I do think it was a little bit of a stretch for Nintendo to just like force it down. I wouldn't have done that. But here's my point here. It's just a personality trait. You like to ramble a lot.
Me? Oh yeah, this is very true.
I sometimes don't like that, but I sometimes do. I don't want to single out the time that you ramble a lot for a pointless reason and be like calling you out for it. But then when you ramble a lot and it gives a good point out of it and then be like, oh, that's good. I have to like be consistent with your personality. And that's where I'm like, yeah, that's just Nintendo's
I'll
personality.
I'll agree.
They're just arrogant.
However,
Sometimes
I
I feel.
do think that they should learn from the criticisms more deeply because you said earlier I've not played the new update. I don't know what actually is going on, but they just fixed like the percentage chance
It
of
went. They
whatever.
said it went up to 50, but I watched a YouTube video of someone testing it, and it like barely changed. It's like,
Okay,
okay, I don't know what happened.
I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, but
That if you're watching this in the
for
future, that's one update version 1.20, I think, is what we're
okay,
referring to. If they did fix it, but
there's other games out there. We can college football has it to where they have different modes, but even something like Fortnite, they have an infinite amount of modes, and that's a free game. I'm not advocating for Nintendo to do Fortnite. I'm just advocating that, like, yeah, there is a solution to this that's fairly simple. Just have a competitive mode that
but
gives the complainers what they want.
but that's not Nintendo's design philosophy. They want you to go into the game and have one mode, no options. You just have a consistent experience that everyone has. That's
I
what they
don't even
think.
think that's.
That's what they think.
I don't
That's what they
think
think.
that's their like design philosophy anymore, especially with Breath of the Wild and its success.
I did say
I
this
feel
in
like
our previous podcast, though. I do think it's kind of funny because Nintendo made like all these super highly designed tracks, and then they're just making people play intermissions. I'm like, that does confuse me a little bit. So I'll give you like the service issue. It was kind of stupid.
it's like ultimately it's just a service issue, but like
Yeah.
even boiling it down, like even to your point that like it's their design philosophy, I don't think it is anymore. Like, I think this is like the old guard. Maybe you're right. Maybe this is like what the old people at Nintendo are, because every company has like 60-year-old like people who get to dictate how things are done.
Hmm.
But like especially with the success of Breath of the Wild and like Mario Kart World trying to emulate that, and like Donkey Kong's trying to emulate that, and like Mario Kart or Mario Odyssey is not really doing that. But like my point is like with these open world games and with the industry kind of moving to more play with your own options, and Nintendo is too, and it's clearly working out for them. If it is a bunch of old heads in the company, they need to immediately get like re-educated or fired. Like they,
Hey,
they need to learn.
hey. I will give Nintendo that they are introducing like a lot more younger people. Like if the people who are working on the Switch 2, like the manufacturer, they all like came in
Yeah.
Nintendo in like the late 90s or early 2000s. So like it's not like your Miyamotos and stuff. They are trying to make new
Again,
people.
I think there is a future. And ultimately, like the biggest thing that I want to see is just willingness to adapt. And they've already kind of showed this even with Mario Kart World. Maybe they weren't willing to introduce a competitive mode, but if people keep complaining, they will adjust to the criticism. And eventually they will introduce some type of a mode just to have three tracks if you can continuously complain. So like I'm not going to dunk on the people that are complaining on the internet because, they have to go to a Discord to play the game how they want to play it. However, I also understand your argument that's like, oh yeah, I like the quirkiness. I just think ultimately the quirkiness should not hinder the service of your product. That's it. I'll stop
Okay.
rambling.
Okay. I think I've said my point too, so I don't see how this could go any further. So next point. Cheaper hardware. Nintendo tends to have lower quality hardware and sometimes in a way that can abuse the consumer. For example, the screen issue, like where like the frames blur. Do you know about what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's
On the Switch 2.
I forget. Yeah, yeah, I forget what it's called, but that's by design. That's not. I think it's variable refresh rate or
Yeah, something
something.
like that. Maybe I don't know if you're right or not. So
So okay,
and
I
then another
know a
example is
lot
like
about it.
another example is like Joy-Con drift, which I
Yeah.
am passionate about Joy-Con drift because freaking three of my
Okay.
Joy-Cons
Okay.
drifted and anyways,
Here's the trade-off, right? Now, with Joy-Con drift, that's unacceptable.
yeah,
That should have been nipped in the bud immediately. I'm not defending that. In fact, I don't even think they should have ever used the Joy-Con joysticks, but that's a different conversation, and I can complain about that a different day. However, the main thing that I will say about their cheapness of their consoles, whether that be the Switch or the GameCube even, is sometimes these price points are actually somewhat justified. Even with the Switch 2, I can understand the price point of the Switch 2, considering the fact that it can play 4K and it has all the like features and options that it actually has built in. Um, I don't have any source for this. I at one point heard that they're not selling this at a major gain. I can't back that up. Do not trust me. However, even if they are profiting off of this, the main point I will point to is that this is a singular console, and I've had this opinion since the Switch. This is a singular console that is combining two of Nintendo's massive experiences that you are not now having to go out and buy a separate console for. I would go so far to say that I would have been willing to pay $500 for the Switch 2. I
you
would have been willing
you
to pay
did
$400.
you did pay $500
No,
for
no,
the
no, but
Switch 2.
that's with the game. I'm saying without the
Oh,
game, I
okay.
would have bought it. Again, I would have paid $400 because when I first saw the Switch, and I said, "Oh, I don't have to go out and buy 300. Was it $300 or two hundred
It was
dollars for the
300.
Wii U?"
Switch one was 300.
No, 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 I'm talking about the Wii U.
The Wii U was 350 at launch with the deluxe set.
Okay, well, didn't they lower the price eventually on that,
I
or am
don't
I
think
wrong?
so. Maybe to
Okay, well,
300, but
that makes this conversation even easier. Considering the fact that you're now are not having to go out and buy a handheld console, and Nintendo's offering you this hybrid experience, I honestly do not care what the price point is as long as it's not the same amount as the Wii U and the 3DS combined plus inflation.
And another thing I'll add is like the Steam Deck that is of the same power of the Switch 2, like whatever model is like $800.
Kind of. Huh?
It's like $700-800. The Steam they have like a more powerful model. I don't know what it's called, but
Okay, I actually researched this because I was making my Switch 2 video and then I got stuck, and so I moved on. We've had this conversation. But
yes.
for the same storage capacity plus a dock, it is $20 more than the base Switch model. So it's like 470, I think. It's $400 for the base thing without a dock, and then if you want a dock, it's an additional $70. If you want like a superior version of the Switch on the Steam Deck, you're paying $800. Now, let's go back. The biggest reason why I don't even consider the Steam Deck to be a real like competitor to the Switch 2, like some of these chronically online people
Okay.
are, I'm just calling it out. Like, if you're legitimately like, the Steam Deck is so much better than the Switch, no one should be out going out to buy the Switch. First off, go outside and get some friends. But second off, I'm just being serious right
I actually
now.
kind of like the Steam Deck. I don't have one, but I do kind of want one. If I
I
had one.
like the Steam Deck. I'm not saying that you shouldn't like the Steam Deck. I'm just saying if you're sitting there and you're mad at people for going out and buying a Switch 2 because the Steam Deck is so much better, go outside and talk to a real human being for once, and you will realize that the average person wants to play Donkey Kong. That's why I bought the Switch 2.
No,
I do not care.
the people who say that are also like, oh, you can just emulate on a Steam Deck.
Dude, cool. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to, like, I just don't. It is so much work. Again, Nintendo's offering me this service. I see the value in buying this service. I will gladly do other means if necessary if they're not offering me the service. But ultimately, and I might be wrong. Maybe it was a different PC handheld. I don't know what it was. I can't speak on this. I don't have a Steam Deck. I can't even remember if I played one. I just know I played a PC handheld at one point.
I've seen one. That's the most I can say.
It doesn't seem like the same quality. If I remember right, and that was a Steam Deck, it wasn't, but maybe it was. But my main point is like Nintendo's just nicer. I enjoy it. It's like the difference between an iPhone and like a Samsung. I like my Samsung. I have a well, I've heard not to show your phone on camera, but I have a Samsung phone, right? It's cool. It's awesome. I think it's superior to the iPhone. I'm technically right. However, for the average consumer that just wants their iPhone to work with their Apple Watch, they don't care. Stop comparing it. It doesn't matter. Just buy what you like. Stop complaining to other people for their decisions. If I want to go out and play Donkey Kong Bonanza, stop yelling at me. I can't do that anywhere else unless I pirate it, and I don't want to do that.
As of right now, there is no Switch 2 emulator, by the way.
But even if there is, I
Yeah.
don't care. I don't. I don't.
Yeah.
I hate that argument. Like we've had this conversation before, and I know you're not on their side either. I'm assuming, but
I'm on your side, but I have a different point that I take to it.
okay, okay.
I
You can go. I'm just gonna ramble. I'm not
Okay,
gonna make any
okay,
new
okay, okay.
points.
My like why I justify like buying a Switch 2 over buying a Steam Deck and just emulating everything, which theoretically I could do it legally. I did say that. I could
So,
theoretically go do all that process. One that is kind of a lot of work and I do but like I'm the type of person to want to go like I have a Linux computer. I'm the type of person to not give a crap about that. About doing the work. Like I don't or I had a Linux computer. I still technically have it, but I replaced it with something else.
I don't use it daily.
Yeah, I don't use it daily. In high school, I screwed around with Linux because I was.
Theoretically, I have one too.
And that's a side tangent. I'm just saying, I'm not the normal consumer that just wants to pop an experience where I don't have to think about it. I'm willing to tinker, and I have a gaming PC too. The reason why I like my like Nintendo system though is because it feels like and I feel like someone might call me out for this, but it feels like I'm part of a community with having the same unified system that everyone else is also having.
Well, and again, let's use the online argument, right? I can't play Mario Kart World with my best friend on a Steam Deck. I might be able to somehow do it, but I'm not smart enough to do it, and it's not worth the time to do it because at the end of the day, I can go out, get a second job, which is what I did, to go get what I want to, be chill. I know it's not everyone can do that. I'm not judging you if you have. That's not really important in this conversation.
Mm.
But especially if you're using this like argument, like, oh, the Steam Deck is so superior. I can't play with my friends. No, and it's the same price. In fact, it's more. It's more than the Switch.
Technically.
So technically, but at its base, it is. So I'm just like, no, just stop complaining online. No one's listening. Clearly, the Switch is selling out more than anybody was even predicting. Just stop complaining. It's not important. I'm going to get crap for this, probably if one person is watching this video. But like, stop. Go outside. Go talk to a real
You are
human
really
being. Go
passionate
work
about
out.
this.
No, I'm so like I've met these people online, only online. Everyone in person is like, cool, you have a Switch too. You want to play Mario Kart? Awesome. We play Mario Kart, we have a fun time. That's the end of the conversation. Because we are real human beings that have aspirations and like other jobs than to be like some random person on the internet. Like, stop. Just be quiet. Go outside, go work out, go do something with your life, get a dog. I don't know. Figure something out. You're spending too much time online. Go.
You really hate these people. I'm a little bit more sympathetic towards them, but
Sympathetic. I'm just not sympathetic to like. Here's the thing. I will respect somebody's opinion and I can have a conversation as long as the entire conversation is not. And again, I'm very into politics, so I have very like emotionally charged conversations all the time. But these people specifically are like, it's the equivalent of like the Samsung people if the Samsung people also didn't go outside and like touch grass every so often. Like
yeah.
I'm just like, not everyone is a Reddit mod. Go outside, go meet people, go to the bar. I don't know, just do something.
My point is just like I don't care enough.
That's my point. No one cares that much. Just stop. Just leave me alone. I don't care.
If I want to play Steam games, I'll do it on my PC, but then my Nintendo console, I'll
Bro,
dick around and
what
freak
I'm
around.
specifically referencing here, and the reason that I'm like slightly emotionally charged about this, is because I went on the Donkey Kong Bonanza subreddit,
There's a Donkey Kong
and
Bonanza subreddit.
there's a subreddit of everything. But because it was leading up to the release,
Okay.
and I just wanted to see like what some of the news was, because I kind of went offline for a little bit because I was working so much.
Okay.
And so I was trying to see like what new things, because I didn't really want to sit through like the direct, because there's the really good direct and then there's like a secondary direct, wasn't there?
Oh, I have no idea. I didn't really watch them.
I don't remember, but at any rate, like I was just excited for the game and I was waiting for to go pick it up. So I went on there and I saw somebody in the comments like, the Steam Deck is so much better. I don't know why you people waste your money on this game. And I'm sitting there on the Donkey Kong subreddit thinking, why are you here, first off? And second off, why are you spending your life, your very limited, very finite life? We are all going to die one day. Now, what comes after, we don't know. But we are all going to die one day, and you're spending your time, your very valuable time that you could be doing anything else. You could go out and get a girlfriend, maybe, considering the fact you're on this subreddit, probably not. But you could go out and you could get a girlfriend. You could go out and you could drink a beer. You could go out and get a education. You could go out. You could become a lawyer. You could go out and buy like a Nintendo Switch 2 and be normal. You could go out and like do anything, and that's fine. You could even go out and buy a Steam Deck and be friends with somebody that has a Steam Deck. But yet you're spending your time on the Donkey Kong subreddit on a game that I want to play and complaining to other people that also want to play this game because you're unhappy with us for some reason, even though we're just on a Donkey Kong subreddit.
Okay. We're gonna move on. We're gonna move on. This next point is actually kind of related a little bit, which I'm happy I brought this up, but it has to be on their hardware, aka
Happy birthday.
shut up. AKA, like, why doesn't Nintendo release on like their games on Steam or their competitors, like PlayStation release like Lego Horizons on Nintendo system, for example?
Okay, I don't, especially, this is under the current system. and even then, there's arguments. But under the current system, they have no need to release it on a separate thing. I think it would be smart of them to do that. Like, especially for like a generation two or back, that would solve most of your piracy issues. That's always been my argument. Let's say for the Wii U, any game that they're not planning on re-releasing on the Switch 2, like what, Mario Kart or Mario Party 9, they're not going to do a re-release of Mario Party
They
9 on
might.
the
I don't
Switch
know.
2. But even then, just include it in the NSO. That's what you're doing. Cool. People will clap because now they can play NSO Mario Party 9 on the Switch 2. But like at the end of the day, like no, the Steam sales are not going to affect your thing because there are people out there like me that have lives that don't play on Steam. But
I
my
play on
point
Steam.
is,
I play on
Steam's
Steam.
cool, but you have friends and you go out and you
Okay,
talk to
whatever.
people. You don't.
Whatever.
Anyways, we're moving on from the conversation. But my point is, I don't think it would affect their bottom line. At the end of the day, I think it would solve their piracy issues. I think they should do it. However, they're not mandated to do it. I would like them to do it, but I don't really care. If you want to play their games, buy their consoles. If there's a service issue, do other things. But like I don't care.
Yeah,
Like they should do it to solve issues, but that's it.
here's the thing. Theoretically, in a world where Nintendo systems were where Nintendo was third party, but they also had their own dedicated system. I don't know why you would do that, but what is Xbox is doing it, and who knows what they're just going through Xbox's decisions right now. But um, so let's say Nintendo pulled an Xbox and just went third party, but also first party at the same time. And I'll be honest with you, there's a decent chance I might have just invested in a Steam Deck with a dock. Like, it does make more sense theoretically. I'm the type of person who is willing to tinker with stuff, and I'm also the type of, and this is also assuming like online would work.
Okay, is the argument is all Nintendo's games releasing day of?
Day of, yeah. And
Okay.
like they just went full Xbox. Maybe like a
And they
month
still have a
after.
Switch for some reason at this point.
Yeah, I don't know why they would, but
And it's not, I'm assuming it does not have access to Steam at this point.
no, they also released on PC. Maybe like a month later, but like in general, almost at the
No. I'm saying that the Switch does not have access to Steam.
no.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, here's what I would do, right? Especially since I like sitting in my bubble. I would play the Switch 2 and I would play the Steam Deck. I would figure out which one is better. I would look at the logistics. Ultimately, the Steam Deck is offering too much at that point because at that point it's giving me all the games that I can play online with all my friends. Plus has, some superior aspects like a Steam Deck or like Steam where you can go on Steam and get whatever you want. Probably has access to the Microsoft Store now.
Maybe. Oh yeah, it's because the Steam Deck
I don't know.
you can emulate Windows on Steam Deck, so you can just do whatever.
Okay, so like you can do Windows, like there's a whole lot of options. So I would, in theory, get a Steam Deck. And ultimately, I do think that would be a preferable way for the thing to go as long as there's a lot of consumer protections.
But the reason why are like at least Nintendo makes games like I feel like I'm the one person who's excited for this game, but Dragon Drive, you get the two mice and you do like this. You'd have to do so much tinkering on Steam that I feel like they wouldn't bother to release it on Steam, on like a Steam Deck. Like yeah, you could connect like two USB mice and that is technically viable, but like there is like kind of that community experience that you have with Switch 2 where like everyone's again, I'm the only one excited for this game. I don't know.
okay, I'm gonna like try to stay out of some stuff,
So I'm just
but
I
so
just do think there's
I am gonna filter my view here. However, I do think there is a lot of value in keeping. This is going to come across controversial to some nerds that don't have a life, but I do think there's value on keeping like companies separate. I do.
interesting.
And I'm not saying this, and again, this is a very unpopular opinion. You know who I am. Probably know pretty well where I was about to take the argument.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason I say this is because having different options, even if the options are terrible, But having different options with, consumer laws does give the opportunity, like you said, to have Dragon Race, or is it Dragon Racers?
Dragon Drive, Drag
Dragon
X2.
Drive. You get Dragon Drive on the Switch, and you got the mice, which I actually really like the mouse thing. I'm really excited for Metroid.
Did
In
you play
fact,
Mario Paint?
I've not played Mario Paint.
I
I played
played it.
some Fortnite. I actually don't love the Fortnite, like how it controls, but that's a Fortnite issue. That's not a Nintendo
Okay.
issue. Um, but no, like, and for instance, I'm also a PlayStation owner. Love, 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 love the adaptive triggers. My favorite thing in the world. And I'm sure there's some good qualities about Xbox. I know there's good qualities about Steam. I'm just pointing out a specific individual. And there I know there's a bigger group of individuals because I've heard this argument online before that praise the Steam Deck like it's the second coming of Christ. But like there is benefits of having different options because like Nintendo, there's the mouse, there's motion controls. No other company was really willing to do that at the time.
Yeah.
Even if Nintendo's not, the most
Funny.
innovative company if you want to like have.
Yeah. Now, here's my final point on this. If theoretically every single like game could be run on any system like of modern capabilities, yeah, I'd probably go buy a Steam Deck. However, video games are not like streaming services where you can just run it on your TV. You can run it on your computer, run it on your phone, like video, like movies and such. Video games are a little more complicated and are reliant on the hardware they there are on, assuming you're not like cloud streaming or something, but that's a different conversation. And the reason why I'm willing to accept Nintendo's like, I guess molded just like
Walled garden.
yeah, they're like you have to play on our systems and such, is because at least they sometimes do make games like Dragon Drive that are like kind of
I have a
interesting.
question.
Yeah,
If you had the choice between a Steam Deck, because you specifically want portability and TV mode, right?
yeah,
If you had the option between the Steam Deck and the Switch 2, both had access to the equal amount of games, meaning that you can do whatever you want on
yeah.
the Switch 2. You don't have to deal with the wall garden. Which one would you choose?
I probably would choose Steam Deck, but I just don't care.
Really?
The reason why is because like Steam. Oh, are we? Hold on.
I'm saying you can get Steam on the Switch
If
2.
we can get if I can get Steam on the Switch too, I get the Switch too.
Yeah, that was my argument. So like
Yeah.
if they remove the walled garden, and the reason I actually am an advocate for this, just so people aren't like, you're defending the walled garden system on Nintendo, which is a term also used for Apple, but that's a different conversation. I would still choose Nintendo in this like scenario just because like Nintendo gives a better product. I like I like the fact I can detach the Joy-Cons, hand one over to my friend. That's very valuable to me. I don't want to lug around a second controller and then have to play the system like a second controller or two controllers. Because one option is I bring a second controller and then I kind of hold the game system like this so the other person with the controller can also play it, or I just have two controllers, which kind of defeats the entire purpose of a portable console.
Yeah.
But on a Switch, I can throw it in my backpack. I always have two Joy-Cons at any time, and I just plop them off, bam, bam, done, play the game. That in of itself, plus you have the mouse controls, plus you have motion controls, yada, 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 yada. I value that. That would be cool. I would buy it. I would
Yeah.
understand why people would want a more simplistic console, especially if the Steam Deck in this scenario was cheaper. I would understand not wanting all the stupid gimmicks that the Switch 2 has for the sake of maybe Dragon Drive being playable on the Switch 2.
Anyways, my concluding point is if theoretically if all games were the same, yeah, I would be annoyed that if Nintendo didn't just port it. However, given that video games are not like movies, I'm happy that Nintendo does have their own little walled garden so they can do what they want to do, you know. And as they
Yeah.
like making games. Nowhere in this conversation so far have we made the point that Nintendo doesn't make good games, besides Pokemon maybe, but
But even then, like, the main gripe that I have with the video game industry as a whole is microtransactions. And Nintendo does a very limited amount. And when I
they
say
have done it
limited
on
amount,
mobile. They have done it on mobile games.
they've done it on mobile, but I'm
Just say
specifically
that.
talking
And
about their
Pokemon.
console games. Have they done it on
Like the
Pokemon?
weird free games. Weird. I mean mainline no, but
Okay, yeah, I'm talking mainline. So like they've not really done it with mainline, and that's something that that I still will defend to this day because like there's so many companies out there that are just like, oh, you don't play this game? Well, you gotta pay $60, and then if you really want to play the game, you better invest the big bucks.
And
If
that's
you
just
wanna if you wanna even be semi-competitive online,
yeah,
two
that is
thousand dollars right now.
yeah, that's just really stupid. Nintendo ultimately values the gaming experience as like the weirdness of that you can only get from a video game. That is why I like
Yeah.
Nintendo. That is why I'm a fan of Nintendo. And so far, they have still done that. They have a walled garden and with protected by ninjas, but I
Yeah.
think it's worth it in the end. And our final point that I want to go into, and this is kind of getting into the games argument. Iwata was better.
That was wrong. Okay, I will give Iwata one thing. One thing. And I told you this when you brought this point up initially, and like I told you that they had one thing. He did lower his and other executives' salaries to keep more employees on board
Mm-hmm.
than otherwise during that was a while, right?
Yeah, that was Iwata. That was Iwata.
Yeah. He kept more employees on board during the Wii U era.
Yeah.
And to me, I have a lot of respect for that. I'm a big labor guy. I respect that to all ends. If you, as even a CEO, which I have a lot of opinions, but if you genuinely care about your labor that much, yeah, I will give you a gold star. I will never speak bad on your behavior there. The biggest thing that I have an issue with the statement is at the end of the day, Iwata would be doing the same stuff
Here's my thing.
if
Okay.
given the same opportunity.
Okay. Here's my thing. 3D All Stars. People constantly said that 3D All Stars was not something Iwata would have done, and in modern Nintendo is greedy. Let me give you an example. Super Mario All Stars, re-released for the 25th anniversary on the Wii, was a $50 full-priced, limited time SNES ROM, completely unaltered, in 2010. May I remind you that Iwata did this?
Yeah. Well, and you can also look at all the
At
like
least 3D All Stars put the music in as an option separately and changed the control menu. The control, you go to the control menu and you have a Wii remote sideways. No, it's an SNES controller. That game.
so I have two arguments with Iwata. First off, he was more unwilling than what current Nintendo is to follow like industry standards, and that's insane. Because we're over here complaining about like, oh, the industry standard of having like a $60 or $70 game. Oh, the industry standard of doing this, this, and that. Like, grr. When in reality, look at what Iwata did during the Wii U and the Wii era. That was not what was in the industry standard by any way, shape, or mean. Oh, you can look at that and you can go, yeah, he was not. He had no idea what he was doing there. Which, again, I will not fault the man. He treated his employees good, but you can look there. But also, he released so many like games on the Wii and the Wii U that had all these different accessories. He allowed like the mobile error to happen, which I don't like that. That was gross. Granted, he kind of died after that, so I can't fault him that much. But like he did allow really bad stuff. For instance, like the all the accessories on the Wii is specifically what I'm mentioning, like the Wii wheel, that's literally just a piece of plastic.
Oh,
Or
but
like
it
the
was
fishing
cool.
rod.
It was innovative. It was giving
No, it
plastic.
wasn't. It was a piece. It was a piece of plastic. Listen, if you have to sell children, like this is my biggest issue with like the Toys to Life, even. But like even what Nintendo was doing back then, you're selling children. Let's be honest, worthless junk that doesn't hold any value and is in fact just increasing the pollution in this world. For what? So they can pretend that they're driving a car, even though you can still do that with the Wii remote? Like, why? Why is this a thing? Why are we doing this? And you have people defending it for its innovation for a piece of plastic, which I don't know what to do. I can make you an innovative wheel. I'll build you one for your PlayStation 5 and charge you $500. How about that?
And like, here's another thing: is like people said the Switch 2 would have been more innovative if Iwata was around. Did we need the Wii U? The Wii U should have been the Wii 2, let's be honest. The Wii U was cool, but it's not pragmatic, and it failed because it was...
How much more innovative did they want it to be? Can we be real here? Like,
I
okay,
know.
let's have a conversation here for a second. I wanted it to be 4K. I would have paid $500 for the Switch 2 base model. I would have done that because I know what I want. At the end of the day, yeah. However, what would have happened if we made it the PlayStation 5? That price tag would have been in the $800 mark. Like, are we thinking here? What are we talking about? It's a hybrid system.
Because people who are chronically online and like the Wii U, they want the Switch U. They want the Switch with a dual screen that you pop out, and so you can emulate DS games on the go.
Are people actually complaining about this?
Yes. They said Nintendo's no
Oh my
longer being.
God.
They're saying Nintendo's no longer being innovative, and Iwata was better.
Okay, so let me get this straight. They want the IR camera back on the Switch 2. They want like a little camera. They want what else could you even add? Did you say there's something else they wanted to add onto it?
I was making a fool out of some dumb
No,
situation,
no, no.
but
But I'm just saying, like,
I don't think anyone actually advocates
let's just think of that. That would have made the price jump up another $100, and now we have a $550 like just for the like IR sensor and the camera.
But I think this is what people are wanting. They wanted Nintendo to make another Wii, not like make a thing with like motion control, but make some new big innovative idea that shakes up the gaming industry. But like, I argue that
Why?
the Switch needed like, because the Switch had my biggest problem with the Switch overall is quality, Joy-Con drift,
Yeah.
a lot of games had frame rate issues, etc. The Switch 2 is like honestly one of my favorite consoles right now, and I'm not saying that because of hype. Like it just does the Switch but better. And I think that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Like I have my complaints about the Switch 2, don't get me wrong. But I will agree with you. Like as soon as I get an SD card that's big enough, and that's its own pile of worms that I
We already
will
talked about this
we
last
could we could,
episode.
we could, we could go into this later,
We
but
already talked about that last
or
episode.
we've already talked about it. But like that's its own pile of worms. But like it is a genuinely really good piece of hardware.
By the way, I don't notice the like frame rate or the blur issue.
See,
I
okay,
genuinely don't notice it. Am I blind? Like I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm sure it exists. I
no.
genuinely don't see it. I
Okay,
don't see it.
so I will say, and thankfully, on the TV, it plays at 60 frames a second. I don't have any issue with it. I have a PlayStation 5. I play Fortnite on both systems. I would notice it's not that big of a deal. Like, there is a slight performance bump on the PlayStation 5, but I also can't bring my PlayStation 5 in my book bag on my way to school or work and play it on my break.
I also
I'm willing
can't.
to take that bump.
I also can't play Cyberpunk while I'm waiting for my dad to finish up his eye appointment, and I'm playing with my motion controls
Yeah.
and while the lady who watches me. That did happen, by the way.
But again, let's say that Nintendo did put a 120 frame screen on the Switch 2. Let's say that they did that. How much do you think that that would increase the price tag of the system, guys? Let's critically think for a second.
I think it can.
It would.
No, the problem is that it can output 120 FPS, but like it has a weird frame blurring issue where the refresh rate isn't 120 FPS.
I don't think it can then. I'm sorry. I don't think like I think that there is some type of restriction. Now, whether or not this restriction is valid, I don't know. I'm not a tech nerd. But like either it can or it can't. I have a feeling it can't because of like CPU power, because it's not just the screen
It
you're
probably
seeing.
can. I'm gonna be on the side of it. They probably could have eaten the cost, but like I don't know. That gets back to the economy stuff that we already discussed.
But even I don't know. Like I don't care. It works. I can't notice it. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, we're starting to
Again,
get to
if
the.
if
It's clear that we're getting to the chronically online arguments. It's clear that we're getting to the arguments of the people who are chronically online.
I'm telling you, they need to go outside. Like, listen, I'm online too much, right? Like, I listen to a podcast when I'm at work, like constantly. I like watch YouTube videos at work. I'm basically online probably 12 hours a day. I'm bad, right? But
Of
I know
course.
when to put my phone down and go outside and go work out Go outside and go with my friends to the movies. Go outside and go out with my friends. I know when to do that. I don't think some people do. I'm so real. I don't like it's not that big of a deal if you don't if
Wait. You know what I find funny? When game chat was revealed, I have seen so many people online be like, I'm never going to use that. I don't have any friends anyways. That's a you problem. That's a you problem. Me and you, we've done use game chat plenty of times. I love
we've
the
used
feature.
game chat like probably at least 20 times and you've only had your Switch for how
Like a
long? Like
month.
barely a month at this.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I have
And
seen.
also,
I
there
can.
was like a billion people complaining there was no game chat on the original Switch.
And now they
No,
did
I have an
one.
issue with how they did it. Like, I wish they would have put the like microphone on the controller. That would have been nice.
The Pro controller did that, but
Kind of. It still doesn't have like a mic built in like the PlayStation. But even then, I don't care. It works. I'm not gonna complain online because I don't care that much. Go outside. Go outside. Go work out in the gym. Use this energy for anything else. Go online and complain about politics. That is a better use of your time. Like
is it
that would be
though?
so real.
Is it though?
It is. It genuinely is. I would rather you be a brainless, like crazy person complaining about actual issues than the Switch 2's voice chat functionality. I don't care. Just
Complain,
stop.
complain that you don't have friends. I've genuinely
Dude,
seen people
like
do that. I've genuinely
there
seen
are people
say that like, oh my gosh, I don't care about game chat. I don't have any friends anyways. I'm like, that's a you problem.
again, there are more important issues in this world. Use this energy for something productive or just go outside and be a normal human being. I don't know. Just stop.
Okay, this is our final point of just like, do you think older Nintendo games were better? Do you think they're in? Do you think that they're becoming like Star Wars, or becoming like
No. No. As a Star Wars fan, listen, Star Wars has had some high peaks after George Lucas sold the company. Andor is one. I love Andor. Andor's great. If you've not watched it, go out and watch it. But Nintendo has consistently released a solid game once a year. Not saying it's the best game, not saying it's the game of the year, but like once a year, there's always a one Nintendo game normally. Like I think the last year of the Switch may have not really had those. Maybe it has, and I'm just forgetting. But every year, there's some big game that I'm like, wow, I need to go out and play that because PlayStation isn't offering something like that. I'm able to acknowledge that. And like, even if you're not going to go out and buy a Switch 2, even if you're a Nintendo fan of old that is kind of disappointed in what they're doing, part of that could just be that you're older, and that's okay. But also, if you're just a Nintendo fan that doesn't really like value what Nintendo's doing, just I don't care. Like, you do you, that's fine. You're a Nintendo fan, do not get offended. Like I saw somebody in your comment section like, "Oh, so you're not a Nintendo fan if you buy all their new stuff." No, you're a Nintendo fan if you just like Nintendo, right? But like Nintendo is ultimately has produced better and better stuff, with the exception of Pokemon. And that's sad because that was my first game series that I ever played of theirs, other than Mario Kart Wii, which I don't count. That's its own conversation.
yeah? So yeah, yeah, I agree. My argument is that like I I've some as someone who has gone back and played older Nintendo games. Like here's my thing: 2D Mario. I now, if you want to talk about an impact standpoint, I could see you saying like Super Mario Bros. 3 and World were better than like the newer stuff.
Yeah.
However, if you go and play those games, like actually sit down and play them, most of the levels feel just like random crap placed on the screen that like made sense. And then the new Super
Yeah.
games are like more dense and like the design philosophy did actually change in the actual levels. And I actually think that in terms of genuinely playing with like someone who isn't like super into the Mario franchise, which to be fair, I'm one of those people. Someone who isn't like super into it, and like for the average person, I actually think the new Super games are designed better and like Wonder is designed for like 2D Mario, because like that's
Yeah.
something I've pointed
Especially
out.
Wonder.
Yeah, because like I've literally made an entire video about Super Mario Bros. 1. I acknowledge the fact that it's so aged. However, it's still good if you like go back in time, but there's also like an
Yeah.
evolution, and Nintendo has used the evolution in their favor and not just like use it as a way to be like, oh, 4K graphics now. Bleh.
I I kind of used the same argument with Zelda. Now, granted, you can make an argument that Zelda Ocarina of Time deserves a remake, and like some tweaks here and there. Because like I do think that was one of the best games of all time. I think if they would put it in HD, did a remaster, I listen, if they announced that tomorrow, I would, and if I got my hands on that, I would die a happy man. The world could end, I don't care. That would be the peak of humanity. But no, like even if you compare like Zelda 1 to like Zelda Breath of the Wild, no one's gonna make that argument. You can maybe make that argument with Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker. We can have that argument all this day, but at the end of the day, Nintendo has consistently gotten better, with the exception of Pokemon. But Pokemon's a special case, and I can go into that argument a
We
different
already
day.
did. We already did.
No, 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 but like there's a lot to unpack there. But my main point is like, especially in the past 10 years, if you compare what they did in the Wii U compared to what they're doing now,
Hmm.
it's night and day. Like they've gotten better. If you compare what they did in the Wii, they've gotten better. If you've compared what they did in the like GameCube, there's an argument there. But even then, I would argue they've gotten better. If you compare them what they did in the N64, SNES, yada 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 yada, you get my point.
Hmm.
Everything has gotten better. And that doesn't mean that you can't go back and still play these old games. Now, I will say there are some really good old Nintendo games that you should go back and play, like Chrono Trigger. I know that's not a Nintendo one, but
That's
that was released on the SNES.
that's a
It was
scramble.
released on the SNES,
Okay, sure.
but it's one of the best SNES games, and it's one of the best games ever made.
I'm playing Ocarina of Time
Also,
right now.
another Ocarina of Time. That listen,
I just got to the adult timeline.
my my point
Yeah.
is that it's not necessarily that these games are better, right? It's just that these games are ahead of their time.
Yeah. My
If you take what those games did and compare it to what the average game does now,
my
it's just
thing
normal.
my thing my to wrap up this conversation. Now I'm not of the opinion that you said. I'm more of the opinion that they've remained about the same, but that's really high. Like a really high standard. Give in
Okay.
accounting for like
If you're accounting for like
like
time period stuff, I can
yeah,
understand what you're saying.
that's my argument. And my final how do I conclude this whole discussion? It's probably like 2 hours by this point. I'll probably cut some rants out because we went off a bit in some areas. But in our current world, the fact that Nintendo in the entertainment industry is able to give me games that are so good when you have companies that like Disney that's like putting out slop or like remakes and that's all they're doing.
Yeah.
I'm kind of comparing Nintendo to Disney here because I feel like that's their closest comparison, that or Apple, in terms of big companies. It's like that's so cool. If it takes them being incredibly arrogant and it takes them taking like their business strategy, given like this, and that's more of a, as we discussed, the problem of the economics. I don't really blame it on Nintendo that much. Besides the arrogancy metric, I think that's just their arrogancy going out. But if
Oh,
it,
and just yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
if it takes Nintendo being so insulated and arrogant for them to make good games, I think that's worth it. If that's what it takes, because so far I don't think anyone else has consistently proven that. Because you've other studios have made really good games. My favorite game of all time is not a Nintendo game, but that other studio has also stagnated.
Yeah. Well, and I'll even agree with just the consistency. Like I said earlier, like it seems every single year Nintendo has at least one, if not like two or three games that are like really big deals for that franchise, whatever that franchise may be.
Mm-hmm.
And they consistently deliver on that experience. Now, whether or not you want to say that they delivered all the way, whatever. But when you compare it to like some of the remakes that Nintendo, or not Nintendo, that Disney's made out, like Disney's not made anything worthwhile. You could argue like Pixar, but even then, there's been a noticeable drop in the entire quality of like Disney's products, and I love Disney. My family like was huge Disney
I'm
nuts.
not a Disney person at all, so I was a little nervous when I said that.
No, no,
But
like like just compare like what they did to Star Wars or what's currently happening in Marvel. Like it is a disaster. And like for people to like to claim that Nintendo's like gotten worse, I don't think they have.
I don't think that I can get that they haven't gotten better if you do like time period stuff and like account for like technological changes, but I don't think they've gotten worse.
No, like, and especially when you compare it to someone like PlayStation, who has not released like a consistent stream of really good games every year. They rely really heavily on third party, or Xbox, who has just not released games, period. Which I might get some Xbox fanboy mad by saying that. Like, they, it's just not a comparison. Like, maybe you can make the argument Nintendo has a monopoly on like consistently good game produce, and maybe that's how they're able to abuse us. Which, sure, maybe that is why, but
A
maybe why
monopoly,
doesn't.
a monopoly is the government's fault.
Well, yeah, like,
Everything's the government's fault. We should all come to communism and take over the entire world. Podcast done. I did not mean that. That is not my views. Please do not take that out of context. Bye.